Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Tristram Wyatt, Senior Research Fellow in Biology at the University of Oxford, and I'm here on behalf of scientists outraged by this trial. I'd like to start by reading you Professor Bill Maguire's response to Judge Hayes' rulings in this case. He's not pulling his punches. Bill Maguire writes, "I'm Professor Emeritus of Geophysical and Climate Hazards at University College London. I provided the expert testimony in support of the defendants in last week's conspiracy trial. It goes without saying that the trial and the verdict were a farce, mark a low point in British justice, and were an assault on free speech. The judge's characterization of climate breakdown as a matter of opinion and belief is completely nonsensical and demonstrates extraordinary ignorance. Similarly, to suggest that the climate emergency is irrelevant in relation to whether defendants had a reasonable case for action is crass stupidity. From my point of view, however, the key aspect of the case was the dismissal by the judge of me as an expert witness, because he had deemed me on the basis of my tweets to be an activist. This has enormous ramifications, because effectively it means that any climate scientist who has spoken out can be banned from providing expert testimony in the future, which in turn means that juries will never have a chance to hear the truth. The bottom line is that first they came for the climate activists, now they are coming for the climate scientists. In the face of catastrophe, and at a time when everyone needs to understand the challenges we are facing, we cannot allow this to happen. Our world is heating up more than at any time in the geological record, leading to the greatest threat humanity has ever faced. Yet the British judiciary is working ever harder to shut us up. My message is straightforward. Never give in, never give up. At a time when the global average temperature rise since pre-industrial times is more than 1.6 degrees centigrade, we simply don't have the right not to fight. Thank you for listening." And then this from Professor James Hansen at Columbia University in New York. His testimony to the US Congress in 1989 first sounded the global alarm on the climate crisis. He refers initially to Judge Silas Reed's rulings along similar lines to those of Judge Hayes. The cruelty of such know-nothing judges is not so much to the defendant as it is to our children and grandchildren. Well, I'm here myself because I'm outraged and I'm frightened by the way this trial has been conducted and by the outrageous sentences given today. There are at least 3 shocking things about the way the judge treated science and all of us in this trial. First, the judge prevented the defendants from telling the jury about the climate science that has motivated them to act. Nothing could be more relevant. Second, the judge prevented the defendants from giving the jury a summary of the evidence for climate change, which included the UK government's own finding and advice. And third, the judge blocked a professor of climate science, Bill Maguire, on the grounds that he had tweeted about the climate crisis. The judge is absurd. Scientists have a duty to speak publicly in their area of expertise. What would we think if scientists who discover cancer cures kept quiet about it? There's a really good example of how important it is that scientists act as advocates. You'll remember a previous world crisis with the ozone hole. Chemist Sherry Rowland shared a Nobel Prize for identifying the CFC molecules which were causing the ozone hole. He famously said, "What's the use of having developed a science well enough to make predictions if, in the end, all we're willing to do is stand around and wait for them to come true?" His expert advocacy worked. Governments listened and acted. CFCs were banned. and the ozone hole was closed. With the climate catastrophe unfolding as we speak, we need scientists to speak out, and we need juries to hear their expert advice. It's almost as if some judges don't want juries to hear the science. And there might be a reason, because the science is compelling. In the last year, many juries which were allowed to hear the science around climate change have acquitted climate protesters. Without science and reason, our democracy will fail. And it will fail into fascism. Thank you.